Welcome to Make Sylacauga Healthy Again. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathon Douglas of Broadway Spinal Care. And today we've got a very important topic. I say that a lot, I know, but I keep coming up with them. I think I talk to patients and they say, wow, why don't you do a show on this? And I've got a very special patient in Washington, and she said, you need to do one on something they should teach in school, and that is critical thinking. So critical thinking is not the person who screams the loudest, and it's not the thing you see most on the media and you just believe it. We're talking about listening, taking it in, looking into it yourself. We're going to talk about all those steps today. We always have some kind of music lyric that goes along with this, and we're going to start off with it today. It's from the song The Beauty of Gray. His life is not a black and white world. To be alive, the colors must swirl. And they must. So it's very rarely one thing and it's very rarely the other. We're going to talk about finding that gray area. So we got a graphic to illustrate that to start off. And I think this is pretty profound. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. We're talking about that next. Stay tuned. So let's flash back to the 80s. I think everyone can remember the Snackwells world that we developed in the late 80s. My mom was certainly into that. I know that we had all of those products in the house. And if you were listening at that time, what you heard was that everything that had been done before eating-wise was basically completely wrong. So butter is instantly going to kill you with a heart attack. If you eat an egg, you're done for. If you drink whole milk's going to just be the end of the world. We've got to go to skim. And so that was what they called settled science. This was something that everyone in the dietary world had figured out that we had just done wrong, and now we have saved the world with all of this. And if you'd been a critical thinker at the time, then you would have been called anti-science or anti-progress. But what we really did is we took things that were natural and were common sense to eat and that people had always eaten, and then we made chemicals in a lab and we put them into food, and we said that we were saving people when really we were making money. Someone was making money on that. But what did it lead to? It led to obesity and diabetes and autoimmune problems. And so the problem really was that if you question the science, you were anti-science. And so then that leads into, what is science? Because science is certainly something we've heard about probably more in the last 5 years than we had ever heard about it. So what is the scientific method? We all learned it in school, and we learned it as the scientific method. And that's really important because science is meant to be questioned. It's constantly evolving. There is nothing that's ever settled about science. And the thing that might surprise you is that 90% of peer-reviewed research, and so this is what is considered the gold standard of research. You hear that something was published in Nature or Virology or whatever it was, that there's huge pressure for those scientists to get something published, number one. Number two, there's huge pressure for these journals to have really exciting articles because they get a lot of publicity. But 90%, at least 90%, of what's in that cannot be reproduced in another lab. And I'm going to say that one more time. 90% of what you read in those journals cannot be reproduced in the same way in another lab, which means that there has to be some kind of bias that comes from it. And that leads into something that we've really seen the last 5 years, which is press release science. And so you see something on CNN or MSNBC, Fox, all of them are the same. And it says, new study shows. And then they tell you the basics of it. They don't talk to you about the details. They don't talk to you how it's one study and probably could never be reproduced again. That leads us into our next graphic. And there's a new rule of modern life that's really evolved in the last, I'd say since 9/11, but at least the last 5 years. But the rule of modern life, anything they tell you not to look into and to just trust are the very things you should look into more and not trust. And so if you had said that in 2020 or if you had said that in 2021, then you certainly would have been called anti-science and not following the government guidelines, and that is true. But again, we've got to go back to what we learned in school. And what is science? Science is not believing anything that anyone tells you. It's looking into it yourself critically, thinking about it, testing it. And then if you come to a conclusion, letting someone else test it and letting someone else test it. If you're afraid of someone asking a question, then you are not doing science. Science welcomes questions. If you have something that you found in science, then you send it out to everyone. And I know this because Tara and I worked in scientific labs. I've been around this my whole life. If you have science that's good, you want everybody on earth to question it. And you want everybody on earth who's the smartest of the smart to question it and look into it. But that doesn't happen. And so when you're sitting at home and you're watching the news and CNN says, new study shows this or whatever, then even if you're not a scientist, you don't have to be. We live in a world where the internet gives us access to amazing things. And so look into it. Maybe get online, read a few things about it. Make sure that you really understand what you're getting into, because there are usually some other things that are behind it. Let me give you a few more examples. Food pyramid. The food pyramid was completely redesigned based on carbs and soybeans and all kinds of things that are subsidized heavily by the government. So what did that lead to? Instead of people eating fats and healthy meats, we have all these high carbs, kind of like the SnackWell situation. People get really, really sick. Seed oils. You've heard a lot about seed oils this year. RFK is really heavy on getting rid of these seed oils. Why? Because we had butter and we had lard and we had things that our body was used to taking in, and we actually did quite well with, maintained our weight better, we maintained our sugar better, and then we subsidized all these seed oils, this vegetable oil, and then we get in this cycle of what? Obesity, diabetes, autoimmune problems. Everyone's sick, everyone's overweight. When did it start? It started when we were told that a lot of the science is settled, and it's not settled, because science is never settled. Vioxx, I don't know if you remember that mess, but Vioxx was this amazing painkiller that came out. No, gosh, everybody was talking about it. Heard nothing from patients, but how amazing Vioxx was. It caused all kinds of heart problems. It killed thousands of people. It was a settled science situation. Vioxx was completely safe according to the FDA. So, before you put something in you, before you do something that you're being told to do, think about it. Make sure that you feel good about that decision and that you're doing the critical thinking, because we live in a world where we really can all be scientists in some way. We can apply that scientific method and think, does it make sense? Do we have a hypothesis? Can we test it? Is there really enough evidence for us to go forward and proclaim this in some confident way? Gray is where that critical thinking happens, that you'll hear something that is settled science, that's the black, and then you'll hear people say, that's absolute junk, that's the white. It's very rarely one or the other. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. We see this in the medical world all the time. There's a constant fight between settled and unsettled, but it's purely because we lose track of what science really is, and science is the most amazing thing there could be if it's applied correctly. So before you listen to science and think that it's completely settled, I want you to think about a few things. Who benefits from you believing this? If there's someone benefiting from you believing it, then there's bias, and bias is not science. Is there another side to it? So can you do a little bit of research and find people talking about the other side? And again, now you got a black, now you got a white. So you know that, like when two people tell you a story, it's usually somewhere in the middle. So find out where that middle ground is for you. And then what are you not being told about this situation? Because if you're told something that sounds really, really good, too good to be true, then it probably is too good to be true. It's not a black and white world. To be alive, the colors must swirl. So I want you to stay critical and to stay curious. And I had a patient tell me, I was talking to her about what we're going to do on this show today, and she said, talk about a chain link fence. And I know what she means, because in the last 5 years, this is something that, you know, in the world of questioning people, I guess, is kind of something that has been talked about. But I'm just going to throw this out for you to think about. If you had a neighbor who had some water that had a ton of mosquitoes in it, can't keep them out of your yard, and they told you the science is settled, we're going to put up a chain link fence in between your yard and their yard, and we're going to block all of those mosquitoes. The science is settled. We know it's settled. This is absolutely going to work. Make sure you put up your chain link fence. Are you going to put up that chain link fence? Or are you going to think about it a little bit and wonder, does that make any sense to me at all? Let's do a little more critical thinking this week. We'll see you soon.